I present to your attention the latest news. Iran is attacking Israel, as Coca-Cola, Vanguard, and BlackRock have informed you. The corporate theater of the absurd, which is passed off as news in the West, has reached a new low after the so-called Iranian attack on Israel, which was stopped by 99% by Israel. Then the Israeli cabinet of ministers published a photo and video showing Coca-Cola bottles in a prominent place. Coca-Cola is owned by Vanguard, BlackRock, and the usual suspects, so you know who is sponsoring this Iranian attack. Of course, the Israeli government had to obey the orders of its corporate sponsors regarding product placement. However, this theater hides a very real war that is currently raging between two alternate timelines on planet Earth. This war is approaching a decisive battle in May. It is then that the Khazar group will try to use its private power to impose totalitarian rule on humanity through its coercive contract. These crazy people are planning to release biological weapons to cause a pandemic just in time for discussion. This is probably why people reported spraying from the skies all over the United States before the eclipse on April 8th. The emergency situation created by them will then be used to justify forced procedures, forced internment in concentration camps, total censorship, etc. The Khazar group, led by David Rene de Rothschild, Klaus Schwab Rothschild, and others, declare that they are not going to give up control over the financial system. Instead, they propose using cryptocurrencies to continue their unelected rule. According to their plan, everyone will be provided with a basic income that will be linked to their social credit rating. If you dutifully accept all their cocktails, etc., you will be allowed to eat insect protein, travel outside your area, and receive other benefits. Those who disobey will have their incomes limited or cut off, as well as travel restricted, etc. Real dissidents will be systematically destroyed. The Khazars offered the head of Me-6 a $48 billion Bitcoin bribe to support their plan. He refused the bribe and instead decided to support the White Hat plan. An alternative proposal put forward by the White Hats and their Asian allies can be seen in the document they are about to sign. In accordance with the original plan, the White Dragon Foundation hereby authorizes the issuance of $100 trillion in bonds. This money will be backed by gold belonging to the Santa Romana clan. After the release, $50 trillion will be sent to a bank account allocated by the Santa Roman clan to finance their humanitarian projects. The remaining $50 trillion will be used by the White Dragon Foundation to create a future planning organization. According to the agreement between East and West, the purpose of this organization will be to increase the number and diversity of life, including human life. The Santa Romana clan sent us images showing some of the gold they own and stated that they are ready to provide all necessary evidence that the $100 trillion worth of gold is real and in their possession. They plan to use their share of $50 trillion for humanitarian projects of their choice and design. Western White Hats will use their share as described in the document. In accordance with this plan, the Organization of Future Planning will be established under full public control. He will hire the smartest people on Earth. He will ask everyone what kind of future they want for the planet, and then find the best way to bring that future to life. There are some clear things that everyone agrees on. For example, it is necessary to put an end to disease, poverty, and environmental destruction. Then great efforts will be made to put an end to death, the enemy of life. To sum up, the plotters' schedule calls for turning the planet into a giant livestock farm controlled by them. Another urges people to decide what kind of future they want, and civil servants to make it a reality. Serious unrest is expected between now and May, as both sides will be fighting each other. The Israeli theater that is now appearing on your screens is ultimately sponsored by the Black Sun organization, as well as the Khazar families. Venerable Mason P3 Vincenzo Mazzara says that the Black Sun will continue to wreak havoc and destruction until the government of the World Federation is established. According to them, so far the theater in Israel is mostly fake. There is a real war going on. In addition, the Naval Special Forces of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps of the IRQ seized the MSC Ares container ship associated with Israel near the Strait of Hormuz, the official IRNA news agency reports. Let's see if they find child slaves in the containers. The situation can escalate quickly. Representatives of the U.S. Space Forces warn that Israel plans to attack Iran with seismic weapons. If this happens, Iran is likely to retaliate by using missiles with neutron bombs, given to them by George H.W. Bush. That is why there are visible de-escalation measures in the Middle East. No one wants this to escalate into a full-scale thermonuclear war and the destruction of the planet. Except for the Khazar group, of course. The Russians are also planning very big steps. Sources in the Russian FSB say their agents are targeting the Rothschild families / the Rockefellers, etc. The Investigative Committee of Russia says that during the investigation of the latest terrorist attack in Moscow, it was established that the funds were received through commercial organizations such as the oil and gas company Burisma Holdings operating in Ukraine. As you know, Burisma is linked to Hunter Biden, who is a cover for the connection between the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds. This is how it will go down in history. The inhuman and misanthropic regime of terrorists and Nazis who betrayed the interests of their people and sacrificed them for Western money and handouts for Zelensky and his inner circle, says the Russian ambassador. Permanent representative to the United Nations Vasily Nebenzia. According to Polish intelligence, a recent example of inhumanity is the official test results show that the mass death of birds was caused by the fact that they were fed Ukrainian grain, which was deliberately poisoned. The Ukrainian issue is only part of a much larger investigation by the Russian FSB into the Khazars. They have uncovered the hidden history of the operation to destroy the Soviet Union, and the trail leads directly to Glencore Commodities. This is the Rothschild Front, which now also controls the Vatican Bank, the Bank of Japan, etc. Pardoned financier Mark Rich has died at the age of 78. CBS News. It turns out that the Rothschild family, through their figurehead Mark Rich, founded trading houses in Switzerland that bought Soviet oil, aluminum, zinc, chrome, steel, etc. for only 5 to 10% of its market value, and then sold through their Swiss trading house at market value and received the difference. Over time, this program evolved into business management for the sake of extra budgetary income, and then into ways to spend money on a safe retirement or the political return of defeated communist leaders. Industries began to include money laundering, arms trafficking, and other clearly criminal activities. Soon, intelligence operations, business, politics, and crime were inextricably intertwined with each other. After this system bankrupted the Soviet Union in 1991, looting increased. Lloyd's of London estimates that between $200 billion and $500 billion were stolen from Russia between 1993 and 1998. The key player in this scheme was the original Vladimir Putin. From July 1996 to March 1997, he headed the office of the President of Russia. There he was responsible for the assets of both the former Soviet Union and the Communist Party worth hundreds of billions of dollars. Putin created schemes using joint ventures, LLC and JSC as front companies to claim large shares in the transfer of state property to other individuals and legal entities. For example, in East Germany, he fraudulently leased a huge Russian cultural center in Berlin to a company for almost nothing, but then the company rented the building for very little, a large sum. Putin pocketed the money the company received from the expensive lease. Most of this operation was conducted through Banco del Gottardo, the Swiss successor to Roberto Calvi's infamous Banco Ambrosiano. In other words, it was a cover for the Vatican Bank. Most of the looted money ended up in London, FSB sources said. The chief prosecutor of Russia, Yuri Skuratov, exposed this scheme in February 1999. Putin responded with a smear campaign that included the publication of a video in which Skuratov allegedly engaged in indecent sex with 2 girls. That's why Putin was killed and replaced with avatars loyal to the Russian Orthodox Church. They took over his business and stopped the looting of Russia. So now we know why so many fabulously wealthy Russian oligarchs appeared after the collapse of the Soviet Union. We also know why the Khazars hate Russia for stopping this huge wealth theft scam. The details of all this can be found in a very detailed Wikipedia article. Here is more supporting evidence. A current CIA agent / former FBI agent describes the hijacking of a Russian oligarch's yacht. Because we could. This is not necessary. We just did it. They were there. We're taking over all sorts of other countries, people we don't like. We're taking over all sorts of nonsense. Because everything is based on the US dollar. Sources in the Russian FSB say they are methodically working to expose the entire Rothschild criminal network / the Rockefellers and will strive to achieve justice, including the return of stolen funds and bringing guilty criminals to justice. This is just one of the threads that keep the Rothschilds, Agnelis, Rockefellers, and other families of the Khazar group in prison. What they fear most is the multiple investigations into their campaign of mass murder. German journalist Paul Schreier has won a huge victory in court under the German version of the Freedom of Information Act. His victory in court forced the German equivalent of the Center for Disease Control and Prevention to provide access to secret documents that the so-called pandemic was actually a planned action. In light of the fact that the same thing happened all over the world at the same time, it is very likely that, it was a castle, that this victory will have huge consequences all over the world. This is very, very important news. This victory was not only captured in alternative media. Rather, the mainstream media could not ignore it, because now many people, many of whom were personally affected by the so-called measures, want to know the truth. And there will be something else they will want to know. And now there will be an official investigation here in Germany. Well, that's exactly what I've been doing for 3 years. In the United States, Senator Rand Paul is leading a congressional investigation into the Demon Plan. A doctor in a white hat from the CIA comments on the following. Rand Paul knows where the trail leads. He's already been honed by the CIA, but the congressional investigation won't do its job. These are international crimes against humanity. Responsibility for 2 years of insanity will require a Nuremberg-type trial. This will require a coalition of global superpowers. We are not the only ones who have claims on the heads of those responsible for this. Americans are not the only ones who suffered and died. The International Military Tribunal (WH) would be a suitable body to prosecute such crimes, but the UN does not work either. This is an unprecedented situation that requires unprecedented solutions. The Japanese are also on the warpath. On this front, Professor Masayasu Inoue held a press conference in Geneva, Switzerland, where he dropped serious truth bombs on WHO and the entire pharmaceutical industry. Inoue says that the terrible cold was an artificial hoax designed to inject a cocktail into the bodies of billions of people around the world. This fake was organized by WHO together with other globalist organizations and world governments. Masayasu Inoue live streaming school. Second, YouTube statistics and analytics. He also warned that Japan's first cocktail manufacturing facility opened in February 2023 and that others were under development. There is a high risk that Japanese-made cocktails will be exported under the guise of false confidence, he says. According to the Japanese Ministry of Health and Welfare, the Japanese population died more than 400,000 people immediately after the first procedure was imposed on the population. This has provoked mass demonstrations in Japan, which are ignored by the corporate media. It will continue to grow even more. Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida made an appeal to the United States. The Japanese military is now also fighting back. Last week, the Khazar group invited Japanese slave Prime Minister Fumio Kishida to Washington with a plan to put the Japanese army under the control of an American general. They made the following statement. The United States reaffirms its determination to defend Japan, including through the use of nuclear weapons. Translation. They used nuclear blackmail against Japan to try to force the country to hand over its armed forces to the Khazars, as well as transfer more money. Our Japanese military sources confirmed that the psychos used the earthquake and nuclear threats against Japan. The Japanese responded by saying that the next time they were attacked in this way, they would use their own weapons on the Atlantic island of La Palma to cause a 100-meter tsunami that hit the east coast of the United States and the south coast of England. As a result of this position, the Japanese armed forces remain independent, and the new emperor now effectively commands Japan. This new group informed the US military that they would work with white hats to nationalize the Bank of Japan and fight the Khazars. The Japanese are also working with Asian secret societies to revive the Greater East Asia Co-Prosperity Sphere, which they fought to create during World War II. An Asian royal source tells us that all attention is now focused on Israel, but something very important is happening in China right now, and no media coverage is allowed. Other sources tell us that communist rule in China is ending. Meanwhile, the Khazars are still implementing their dystopian plans. You can see how Klaus Schwab Rothschild is covertly threatening to create several black swan events. The trial could have been postponed, but preliminary reports indicate that Schwab may have been taken to the hospital for an unknown reason. We'll see. Meanwhile, his minions continue to carry out his orders and carry out his insidious plans. The UK plans to ban beef and lamb, and close all airports by 2029 in response to climate change. They want to limit you and control your food supply. Meanwhile, the Polish government, under the leadership of Khazar agent Donald Tusk, has promulgated a censorship law that provides for 3 years in prison for the truth, inconvenient for gender ideologues. According to this law, people will be jailed for saying things like, "Men who identify as women should not participate in women's sports." At the same time, another servant, Justin Castruto, is passing a similar law requiring criminal liability and a fine of $25,000 for offensive statements against the LGBT community and protests against their propaganda. Don't worry, criticizing heterosexual people, Christians, white people, etc. will still be legal. Castruto also talked about how new social engineering based on a social credit rating will make life more expensive for those who do not share his vision of the future. These are just some idiots parading in front of the cameras as if they were leaders. For example, it looks like they just rolled out another avatar of Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin with the inscription, "There is no evidence of genocide in the Gaza Strip." They're also still using Nancy Pelosi, the 8th at the moment, as far as we can tell. Greg Reese of the Reese Report shows that no one in the current so-called federal government has been sworn in. That means they're all traitors. Here is an example of what the chimeras have turned the US Congress into. A Democrat from Texas, born in New York, a member of the House of Representatives. Sheila Jackson Lee tells students that the moon is a planet made up mostly of gases. Sheila Jackson Lee, a Democrat from Texas, shocked members of the Eclipse School Circle on Monday by saying that the solid moon is a planet that is mostly made up of gas, and then added that she still wants to be first in line to learn how to live there. Another puppet is the British Rishi Sunak, who is obviously so ignorant that he does not even know how to use a hammer. Let's not forget about the main dodo Joe. Donald Trump talks about Joe's incompetence, his decrepitude, and the fact that we are about to be dragged into a world war. Meanwhile, the fake Trump is still going to appear in fake lawsuits, etc. But even the corporate media is starting to ask questions like this report, which Melania Trump points out. Melania Trump makes observers wonder if she will appear, albeit imperceptibly, on the campaign trail with her husband. Aloof and mysterious, the Slovenian-born former model is noticeably absent when her husband Donald Trump makes his third bid for the White House post. She also did not attend any court sessions with her husband, as he handles many cases. There is also new evidence that some of the people they flaunt may actually be clones. Take a look at the photos of Mark Zuckerberg, the founder of Facebook, and David Scott Portnoy, an American businessman and social media figure, founder and owner of the sports and cultural company Barstool Sports, as well as former White House Representative Jen Psaki. Are they clones? If so, who creates them and why? Soon their puppeteers will be able to be exposed without fear of consequences. An example is Alex Jones from InfoWars. The CIA contractor admitted that the CIA targeted Alex Jones, and the FBI had agents on January 6. During the Sound Investigations investigation, footage was recorded of a CIA contract employee and a former FBI employee who apparently admits to a number of questionable actions, including putting pressure on the families of Sandy Hook victims to sue Alex Jones, and in the presence of agents during the incident at the Capitol on January 6. Alex Jones has now launched a counteroffensive and says, "I plan to file a lawsuit against the CIA and the FBI. I hired firms to file a civil rights lawsuit." It seems that the Khazar group perceives the collapse of its control network as the end of the world. At least that's what the Israelis think. According to Mossad sources, the Israeli government plans to slaughter and sacrifice red calves on April 22, 2024, at the beginning of Passover. The sacrifice of a red heifer involves the sacrifice of a red heifer, which should be spotless and completely red, without a single unkempt hair. The ashes of this sacrifice are then used in a purification ritual necessary for people wishing to gain access to sacred sites or participate in certain religious practices. According to sources, this is preparation for the construction of the Third Temple. Finally, in a sign that we are indeed facing unprecedented events, something massive left Antarctica during the eclipse and was caught by radar. Something like a blob moving from Antarctica to the Atlantic over the next few days. What is this mass? The weather system or something else? The Pentagon representative asks. Japanese military sources confirm that this is not just a digital anomaly, and that ocean buoys have recorded huge 80-foot waves in the area around the drop. The US Space Force confirms that a lot of energy has been released from Antarctica. They find out what kind of explosion it was and what its purpose was. We can only speculate, but it could be related to the attack on the Nazi Antarctic base. We are definitely entering uncharted waters.